Hi, everyone.
Greetings. We're doing the book of Revelation, and we've gone through chapters 1 through 3. And in our track, which we have available, by the way, if you send us an email, called Strengthen the Things That Remain, we made the point that history has vindicated the trajectory you might read from the 7 churches in chapters 2 and 3 of Revelation. That is, you have in there 7 churches, 5 of which get mixed or bad reviews, 2 of which get very good reviews from Christ, yet they all remain Christ churches. So we'll deal with that a little bit at the end, that this challenged us as ex-Jehovah's Witnesses to rethink our view of what church is and how Christ sees the churches. But we ended the track, Strengthen the Things That Remain, with some quotes from 2 famous skeptics who are reacting to a certain text in Revelation chapter 2. And we'll read the passage so that you can orient yourself properly, which is Revelation 2, 1-5.
To the angel of the church in Ephesus write, These are the words of him who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, and walks among the 7 golden lampstands. I know your deeds, your hard work, and your perseverance. I know that you cannot tolerate wicked men, and that you have tested those who claim to be apostles, but are not, and have found them false. You have persevered and have endured hardships for my name, and have not grown weary. Yet I hold this against you. You have forsaken your first love. Remember the height from which you have fallen. Repent, and do the things you did at first. If you do not repent, I will come to you and remove your lampstand from its place.
So Ephesus gets basically a very good review, except for this one qualification, that they've lost their first love. And of course we all know that if you lose your love in a marriage, that's a very serious step backwards from commitment, right? But Ephesus remained a center of Christianity for centuries after this was written. 3 great councils were held in Ephesus. So the lampstand of Ephesus was not moved for a long, long time. And that I think is a testimony to the fact that where the truth is, that is in a church like Smyrna and Philadelphia, where Christ basically gives an excellent review to both those and says nothing about their faults. You would expect, if that continues to be so, that good things are going to happen. The church is going to survive, and they're going to bless the community around them, and it's going to be seen. And both these skeptics that we're dealing with now have to deal with the fact that, yes, all of these 7 churches, these 7 cities that are mentioned here, Smyrna and Philadelphia, which get excellent reviews, and Ephesus, which gets a good review, all of these cities had late after histories. And by the time you get to the comments of Edward Gibbon in this very famous book, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, still in print, more than 200 years after its publication. When you get to the comments of Gibbon in the 3rd volume, by the way, so we're talking 2,000 pages here of detailed historical development. In the 3rd volume, on page 642, he says this about the 7 churches in their later history, the 7 cities in their later history as well. He says, the captivity or ruin of the 7 churches of Asia was consummated. And he's at this point dealing with the 14th century, when for several centuries now, Turkey has been overrun by Islam. And he says, the barbarous lords of Ionia and Lydia still trample on the monuments of classic and Christian antiquity. In the loss of Ephesus, the Christians deplored the fall of the first angel, the 7 angels of the 7 churches, the first angel, the extinction of the first candlestick, which of course was the greatest church of Asia, Ephesus. He says the first candlestick of the Revelations, and that kind of bothered me. I thought I'd misread it.
Yeah. But
I'm surprised that a scholar of the importance of Gibbon would miss the point that he's misnamed the book he's talking about.
Yeah.
It's not the book of Revelations.
You checked the footnote, so you know that this was not just a slip.
It's not a slip. So does he not know that? because nobody, a scholar of the New Testament calls it the book of Revelations. Some Christians do.
Yeah.
But you misunderstand even the nature of the book if you call it that, because it's not a series of revelations about the future. It's the revelation of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
One revelation. He goes on, the desolation is complete in the temple of Diana, which was, of course, the greatest temple in the world at that point, and was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The temple of Diana, or the Church of Mary, will equally elude the search of the curious traveler. In other words, ancient paganism has been erased, and Christianity has more or less been erased in most of these places, certainly in Ephesus. He goes on, the circus and 3 stately theaters of Laodicea are now peopled with wolves and foxes. Sardis is reduced to a miserable village. The god of Muhammad, without a rival or a son, is invoked in the mosques of Thyatira and Pergamos. And the populousness of Smyrna is supported by the foreign trade of the Franks and Armenians. So he makes a difference there in saying Smyrna is still a populous place. He makes no comment about its Christianity. Then he says Philadelphia alone has been saved by prophecy or courage. So there's the mark of a skeptic. He doesn't commit to the reason that Philadelphia has been spared. At a distance from the sea, forgotten by the emperors, encompassed on all sides by the Turks, her valiant citizens defended their religion and freedom above 80 years, and at length capitulated with the proudest of the Ottomans. Among the Greek colonies and churches of Asia, Philadelphia is still erect, a column in a scene of ruins, a pleasing example that the paths of honor and safety may sometimes be the same. So even the most famous skeptic of the 18th century, who died an unbeliever, apparently, admits that Philadelphia and Smyrna are separated from the other 5 churches by their later history. Then we have Ramsay, who also started out as a great skeptic, as a scholar at Oxford and a noted archaeologist already, later knighted for his contributions to archaeology, who says this about the circumstances of the 7 churches.
Life for Smyrna, honor and dignity for Philadelphia are promised, not for a residue amid the unfaithful, as at Thyatira or Sardis, but for the church in both cities. It is an interesting coincidence that those are the 2 cities which have been the bulwark and glory of Christian power in the country since it became Mohammedan. They are the 2 places where Christian flag floated latest over a free and powerful city, and where even in slavery the Christians preserved cohesion among themselves and a real influence among the Turkish conquerors.
So you have 2 great skeptics, one from the 18th century and one from the 19th. One becomes a Christian because he discovers that history and prophecy somehow cooperate in presenting the picture that the New Testament is credible. Even the prophecies of the New Testament are vindicated by later history. And another one who sees the same facts, Gibbon, and is apparently not moved religiously. So I guess that's something we ex-witnesses have to think about, because from what we can see in the ex-witness community, most people default to unbelief.
Yeah.
The same facts are available to all, and if we confront the facts rather than make no examination, as maybe in our disappointment, the fact that we don't want to even think about these things anymore is very understandable, but it's no place to stay.
Yeah.
We still all have the responsibility to check the facts, look at history, and especially look at prophecy. I think Jews were converted to Christianity by the outworking of prophecy, specifically the prophecies about the Messiah. And I think prophecy is the greatest proof of the divine authority of this book. How can you explain this coincidence of history any other way?
Yeah.
So we want to put some links in. The first of which is to the video that was the first of our relating a bit of personal history about the impact chapters 1 through 3 of Revelation made upon us. shortly after we left the Watchtower.
Yeah, and they ended up really changing our mind about Christendom, about churches. And when you read the seven churches, you realize they all had strengths and weaknesses, but they still had Christ as their head. He still calls them his church. Excuse me.
And he reserves the right to remove the candlestick.
Yeah.
As obviously he did in the case of at least 5 of these churches of Revelation. He did remove them from the scene of history. And then we will also want to put a link into the playlist on Revelation, because we didn't start with chapter 1 in the playlist. We started with some looking at what the Watchtower has said about several famous passages and how they've established several of their more unique doctrines from the book of Revelation. Never a safe thing to do. So the first batch in the playlist are on the subject of the Watchtower and how it's treated the book of Revelation over the decades. And later on we get to chapters 1 through 3, which certainly challenged our perceptions and then changed our commitments, right?
Right.
See you soon.